You are trying to park a new car in a space that is already occupied by a wrecked truck. You stand there, praying for the new car to materialize, begging the universe to grant you this vehicle, yet you refuse to move the wreck that sits rusting in the spot you desire. This is not a metaphor for laziness. This is the exact mechanical error you commit every single day with your consciousness. Joseph Murphy, the master architect of mental law, revealed what he called the law of displacement. And it is not poetry, it is physics. Physics dictates with absolute mathematical certainty that two objects cannot occupy the same space at the same time. If your mind is filled with the dense, heavy substance of poverty, if every mental coordinate is occupied by lack, fear, and limitation, then wealth literally has no coordinates to exist in. Wealth is not some ethereal mist that can seep into the cracks of your consciousness. It is a solid mental object that requires space. You cannot add wealth to a poverty consciousness the way you cannot add a gallon of water to a full-gallon jug. You must displace the poverty with the wealth. You must push the old reality out by forcing the new reality in. And this is not a gentle process. It is a mechanical expulsion, a law as reliable as gravity. The pain you feel is the pain of clutter, the suffocating sensation of a mind so crammed with problems that there is no room for solutions to even take form. You look at your life and you see a warehouse packed floor to ceiling with broken machinery, bad memories, unpaid bills, and paralyzing fears, and you wonder why the blueprints for success you downloaded from a seminar cannot seem to manifest. The reason is simple. There is no floor space on which to build. You are trying to construct a cathedral in a junkyard without removing the junk. This is the reverse bridge that connects your modern chaos to Murphy's timeless law. You are trying to pour fresh water into a bucket of mud. You add a cup of clear, clean water, a positive thought, a hopeful affirmation, and you stir it into the thick, dark sludge of your habitual worry. What do you get? You do not get clear water, you get muddy water, slightly lighter in color perhaps, but still undrinkable, still toxic. The mud has not been removed. It has merely been diluted, and dilution is not transformation. Murphy's promise is radical in its simplicity. If you understand displacement, you do not fight the mud. You do not scoop it out bit by bit with a spoon, analyzing each scoop, asking why the mud exists, going to therapy for the mud. You pour the clear water in with such force and such volume that the mud is pushed over the edge of the bucket. The new replaces the old mechanically, automatically, without negotiation. This is not philosophy. This is the physics of replacement, and it operates whether you believe in it or not. In this transmission, we will execute what I call the immersion protocol, a precise set of instructions on how to flood your mental container so completely that the old problems, the old limitations, the old identities are washed away not by effort, but by sheer displacement. You will learn to turn your mind into a fire hose, not a drip. But let me warn you now of the trap that has already ensnared most who will watch this video. There is a method called the drip, and it is the reason most people fail with affirmations and positive thinking. Adding a little bit of positive thought once a day, perhaps during your morning coffee, is utterly useless against a bucket of mud. It is homeopathic doses of hope applied to industrial strength fear, and the result is predictable. Nothing changes. I will teach you the Firehose Method in Part 4, where you will learn the exact frequency and intensity required to create true displacement. But first, you must make a pact with this knowledge. You must commit to understanding that your mind is not a filing cabinet where you can store both wealth and poverty in different drawers. It is a container of fixed volume, and whatever fills it determines your reality. If you are ready to clear the space, to evict the old tenant so the new one can move in, then type in the comments, "I displace the old." This is not a ritual. It is a declaration of intent, a signal to your subconscious that the eviction process has begun. Let us establish the central concept with the precision of a law engraved in stone. Archimedes' Principle applied to mind. When you step into a bathtub, the water rises. Your body, being a solid object with volume, displaces the water. The water does not disappear. It is forced to move, to rise, to overflow if the tub is full enough. This is not a suggestion the water considers. This is mechanical cause and effect. In the mind, when you step into the feeling of wealth, not the idea of wealth, not the distant hope for wealth, but the actual felt experience of prosperity as a present reality, the feeling of lack must spill over and leave. They cannot coexist in the same mental space at the same time because the mind, like the bathtub, has a fixed capacity for felt experience in any given moment. Murphy taught that you do not analyze the darkness, you turn on the light. The light displaces the darkness not by fighting it, not by understanding its origins, not by making peace with it, but simply by occupying the space where the darkness was. When you flip the switch in a dark room, do you see the darkness running away defeated? No. It simply ceases to be because light has filled the coordinates where darkness existed. Darkness is not a thing, it is the absence of light. Poverty is not a thing, it is the absence of the wealth consciousness. You do not psychoanalyze your poverty, tracing it back to childhood wounds or societal structures, because poverty is not a solid object with roots. It is a vacuum, a lack, an empty space in your consciousness where wealth should be. When you crowd that space with prosperity, with the felt reality of abundance, with the conviction that you are wealthy now, with the continuous mental image of wealth flowing to you, the poverty is pushed out over the rim of your mental container. This is why affirmations fail for most people. They are trying to add prosperity while keeping the poverty. They say, "I am rich," once in the morning, and then they spend 14 hours in terror about bills. That is not displacement. That is a drop of oil in an ocean of water. The oil floats on top, never mixing, never transforming the water. To displace water with oil, you would need to pour in oil with such volume that the water is forced out. Murphy understood this principle so deeply that he built his entire teaching on it. Fill the mind with the new, and the old has no choice but to leave. It is not spiritual warfare, it is spatial logistics. The mechanism is elegant in its simplicity. Your subconscious mind is not a judge who decides which thoughts are true or false. It is a faithful servant who accepts whatever you habitually impress upon it as instruction. If you habitually impress upon it the feeling of lack, it produces lack in your experience. If you habitually impress upon it the feeling of abundance, it produces abundance. But here is the critical insight. You cannot impress both simultaneously with equal force and expect clarity. The subconscious, like a photographic plate, can only develop one image at a time. If you are constantly switching between the negative of poverty and the negative of wealth, you get a double exposure, a blurry, useless image that manifests as confusion and stagnation in your life. Displacement demands that you choose one image and flood the plate with it until it is the only image that can develop. This is not mysticism, this is the mechanics of mental photography. And Murphy knew that most people were creating double exposures without realizing it. Consider the analogy further. A room can be filled with air or filled with water, but it cannot be half air and half water at normal pressure. If you want to fill a room with water, you must displace the air. The air does not need to be convinced to leave. It is pushed out by the incoming water. Your consciousness operates on the same principle. When you fill it with the water of a new belief, the air of the old belief is displaced. This is why Murphy insisted on saturation, on the continuous, relentless repetition of the desired state. One repetition of "I am prosperous" in a mind filled with poverty thoughts is like one cup of water poured into a room filled with air. It evaporates instantly, absorbed by the dominant atmosphere. But if you pour in 1,000 gallons, if you flood the room, the air has nowhere to go but out, and the water becomes the new atmosphere. The tragedy is that most people approach mental transformation the way they would approach redecorating a room. They want to keep the old furniture and just add a few new pieces. They want to keep their habitual worry about money, their belief that life is hard, their identity as a struggling person, and just add some positive thoughts on top. This is impossible. The old furniture takes up space. The new furniture cannot materialize in occupied space. You must remove the old to make room for the new, and in the realm of mind, removal happens through displacement. You do not wrestle with a negative thought, trying to evict it through willpower. You simply introduce a positive thought with such frequency and intensity that the negative thought is crowded out. It is not about strength, it is about volume. It is not about being strong enough to overcome fear. It is about pouring in so much faith that fear has no room to exist. Murphy's genius was in recognizing that the mind operates on this physical principle. He saw that consciousness was not some abstract mystical realm where special rules applied. It was a realm governed by laws as precise as the laws governing water and air. If you understand how displacement works in the physical world, you understand how it works in the mental world. A ship floats because it displaces water. The weight of the water displaced equals the weight of the ship. In your mind, your dominant feeling displaces all lesser feelings. If your dominant feeling is wealth, poverty is displaced. If your dominant feeling is health, sickness is displaced. The question is never, can I displace this negative condition? The question is always, am I pouring in enough of the new condition to create displacement? Most people are pouring in thimblefuls when they need fire hoses. Let us deepen this with another layer. Displacement is not partial. Water does not half displace air. When you submerge an object in water, the air around that object is fully displaced by the water. There is no negotiation, no compromise state where the object is surrounded by both air and water in the same space. In your consciousness, when you fully occupy your mind with a new belief, the old belief is fully displaced. But, and this is critical, if you only partially occupy your mind with the new belief, you create a mixed state, a confused state, and the old belief remains dominant because it still occupies the majority of the space. This is why casual affirmations fail. You are not creating full displacement. You are creating a slight disturbance in the dominant pattern. A slight disturbance in poverty consciousness is still poverty consciousness, just with a few ripples of hope that quickly settle back into the still, dark water of lack. Murphy observed people who prayed for prosperity while simultaneously speaking and feeling poverty throughout their day. He saw that they were confused as to why their prayers were not answered. The answer was mechanical. They were not creating displacement. They were adding a small amount of prosperity consciousness to a vast ocean of poverty consciousness, and the ocean remained an ocean. The small amount dissolved, diluted, disappeared. To change the ocean, you must pour in a new substance with such volume that the original substance is forced out. This is not about prayer being heard or not heard by some external deity. This is about the mechanical law of the subconscious mind, which can only produce in your outer life what is dominant in your inner life. If poverty is dominant, poverty is produced. If wealth is dominant, wealth is produced. Dominance is determined by volume and frequency of impression. Therefore, the path to transformation is clear. You must flood your consciousness. You must immerse yourself in the new state. You must saturate your mind so completely with the desired reality that the undesired reality is pushed out by sheer force of volume. This is not a gentle process of adding a little positivity to your life. This is a systematic, mechanical process of displacement, and it requires intention, intensity, and relentless consistency. The law of displacement does not care about your history, your trauma, your circumstances. It only responds to what you are currently pouring into your consciousness. Pour in the new and the old must leave. This is the promise, and this is the mechanics. Now let us establish the unshakable logic with an analogy so simple that even a child can grasp it, yet so profound that it contains the entire secret of transformation. The analogy of the container. Your life, your entire experience of reality, is a container of fixed volume. Imagine a glass jar that holds exactly 1 liter. Right now that jar is filled with a specific mixture. Perhaps 90% of it is worry, the thick, dark substance of fear and lack, and 10% is hope, a thin, pale liquid that barely colors the overall mixture. This is your current consciousness, your current mental atmosphere, and it determines everything you experience. The job that feels like a trap, the bank account that never grows, the relationships that disappoint, all of these are not random punishments from a cruel universe. They are the precise external equivalents of the internal mixture in your container. Murphy understood that to change what you experience, you must change the contents of the container. and there is only one way to change the contents. You must pour in something new. To change the ratio from 90% worry and 10% hope to, say, 90% conviction and 10% residual doubt, you do not scoop out the worry. You cannot remove worry directly, any more than you can remove darkness directly from a room. You can only introduce light, and the darkness vanishes as a consequence. In the same way, you cannot remove worry from your mind by fighting it, analyzing it, or trying to suppress it. You can only introduce conviction, the solid, golden substance of knowing, and the worry is forced out over the rim of the container. This is simple volume metrics, the mathematics of displacement. You change the contents by input, not by scoop. Every moment you spend trying to stop worrying is a wasted moment because you are focused on the wrong end of the equation. You are trying to remove the old instead of adding the new, and the old cannot be removed directly. It can only be displaced by the new. Picture this container sitting before you. It is filled nearly to the brim with a dark, heavy liquid, the accumulated worry, fear, and negative expectation of years or decades. You have been conditioned to believe that to change your life, you must first dig into that dark liquid, analyze it, understand why it is there, perhaps even make peace with it. But Murphy reveals a revolutionary truth. The dark liquid does not care about your understanding. It does not need your permission to leave. It simply needs to be displaced by something lighter, something more powerful. You begin to pour in the golden liquid of conviction, the absolute knowing that you are prosperous, healthy, loved, and successful. At first, the golden liquid seems to disappear into the dark, and you see no change in color. This is the critical moment where most people stop. They pour in a few drops of positive thought, see no immediate change in their life or their feelings, and conclude that it doesn't work. But this is a failure of understanding volume metrics, not a failure of the law. You continue to pour. With each repetition of your affirmation, with each visualization, with each moment of dwelling in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are adding volume to the container. The dark liquid, being heavier and having occupied the space first, resists at first, but it has no choice in the face of incoming volume. As you pour more and more of the golden conviction in, the dark worry begins to rise toward the rim. You may not see this happening internally at first, but it is happening with mechanical certainty. Finally, the container reaches capacity. It can hold no more. The next pour of conviction causes the worry to spill over the edge, to overflow, to leave the container entirely. This is the moment of breakthrough, and it is not a mystical event, it is a volumetric event. You have simply reached the displacement threshold where the new has crowded out the old. The beauty of this analogy is that it removes all mystery from the process. You do not need to deserve the new liquid. You do not need to be spiritual enough or pure enough. You simply need to understand that the container holds a fixed volume, and whatever you continuously pour in will eventually dominate the mixture. If you pour in 1 drop of conviction per day and 14 hours of worry per day, the mixture will remain dark with perhaps a faint golden tint that no one can perceive. But if you reverse the ratio, if you pour in 14 hours of conviction per day and allow only scattered minutes of worry, the mixture rapidly transforms. The container becomes predominantly golden, and the dark liquid is reduced to a thin residue that is easily displaced by the next wave of golden input. This is not theory, this is mechanics. Murphy taught that the subconscious mind is the container, and it accepts whatever you pour into it without judgment. It does not decide that worry is more realistic than conviction, or that fear is more justified than faith. It simply receives impressions and reproduces them in your external experience. If the dominant impression is lack, it reproduces lack. If the dominant impression is abundance, it reproduces abundance. The subconscious is not your enemy. It is a faithful mechanical servant. But like any container, it can only hold what you put into it. If you put garbage in, you get garbage out. If you put gold in, you get gold out. The entire secret of life transformation is understanding that you control the input, and therefore you control the output. Most people live as if the container is being filled by external forces beyond their control, by the economy, by their past, by other people's opinions, by other. But Murphy reveals that you alone hold the pitcher, and you alone decide what you pour in. Consider the implications. If your life is currently a reflection of a container filled with fear-based thoughts, the solution is not to investigate why those thoughts are there. The solution is not to spend years in therapy excavating the origins of those thoughts. The solution is immediate and mechanical. Begin pouring in faith-based thoughts with such volume and frequency that the fear-based thoughts are displaced. This does not mean the therapeutic process has no value. It means that understanding why you have mud in your bucket does not remove the mud. Only pouring in clean water removes the mud, and the removal happens automatically as a consequence of the input. You do not need to negotiate with the mud, apologize to the mud, or make the mud comfortable. You simply need to out-volume it. The critical error most people make is underestimating the volume required for displacement. They pour in a cup of positive thought and expect a gallon of negative thought to vanish. This is mathematically impossible. To displace a gallon, you must pour in more than a gallon. To displace a lifetime of conditioned poverty thinking, you must pour in a flood of wealth thinking. Murphy's method is not about balance. It is about overwhelming the old pattern with the new pattern until the new pattern is the only pattern that has room to exist. This is why he insisted on continuous daily immersion in the desired state. One affirmation session per week is a cup. One affirmation session per day is perhaps a quart. But living in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, dwelling in it constantly, rehearsing it mentally at every opportunity, that is the fire hose, and that is what creates true displacement. The mental preparation required for the law of displacement is not a state of calm detachment. It is a state of relentless input. You are not preparing to meditate in a peaceful garden. You are preparing to operate a fire hose aimed directly at the mud-filled bucket of your current consciousness. The state you must cultivate is one of intentional intensity, a deliberate decision to flood your mental container without mercy for the old contents. Most teachings on mental transformation speak of balance, of gently introducing new thoughts while respecting the old patterns of being kind to yourself as you slowly evolve. Murphy's Law of Displacement demands something different, a total commitment to input volume, a recognition that you are not dabbling in self-improvement. You are engineering a mechanical expulsion of one reality to make space for another. Relentless input means that you have decided at the level of irrevocable decree that the old thought patterns will not be given a single second of safe harbor in your mind. You are not negotiating with them, you are drowning them. To enter this state, you must first recognize what is currently occupying your container. Sit for a moment and observe your habitual thought stream without judgment. What is the dominant theme? Is it worry about money, fear of rejection, resentment toward your circumstances? Whatever it is, that is the current tenant of your mental space, and it is paying no rent while destroying the property. You do not need to understand why it moved in. You only need to recognize that it occupies space, and that space is needed for the new tenant, the thought pattern of your desired reality. The mental preparation is the moment you decide that eviction is non-negotiable. You are not going to coexist with the old pattern, allowing it to take up 90% of your mental space while hoping the new pattern can somehow thrive in the remaining 10%. You are going to flood the space so completely that the old pattern has no choice but to leave. This preparation also involves understanding that displacement is not comfortable. When you flood a container, things get messy. The old contents spill over. In your life, this might manifest as old relationships that cannot survive your new consciousness falling away. Old jobs that were aligned with your poverty thinking might end abruptly. Old identities might die. Murphy taught that this is not failure. This is the necessary consequence of displacement. You cannot keep the old life and gain the new life. The old life was built on the old consciousness, and as the old consciousness is displaced, the structures built upon it must crumble. This is the price of transformation, and it is non-negotiable. The mental preparation is accepting this in advance, so that when the spill happens, you do not panic and stop pouring. You recognize the spill as evidence that the displacement is working. The state of relentless input requires a kind of holy stubbornness, a refusal to allow reality to dictate your mental diet. The external world will present you with 1,000 reasons per day to return to worry, to fear, to doubt. It will show you evidence that your new thought pattern is unrealistic. It will offer you the testimony of others who say transformation is impossible. But you, operating in the state of relentless input, have made a pact with the law. You will pour in the new thought regardless of external evidence. You understand that the external evidence is old evidence, the materialized form of old thoughts, and it is irrelevant to the future you are building. You are not waiting for the world to give you permission to feel wealthy. You are flooding your mind with wealth consciousness now, and you trust that the world will rearrange itself to match the new dominant pattern. This is not blind faith. This is mechanical trust in the law of correspondence between inner and outer. Practically, this state of relentless input means that you have prepared your tools in advance. You have selected the affirmations, the visualizations, the mental scenes that represent your desired reality. You have them written down, recorded, memorized. You have made it easy for yourself to access the new thought at any moment because you know that gaps in your input are opportunities for the old thought to reassert dominance. Murphy understood that the mind abhors a vacuum. If you are not actively pouring in the new, the old will seep back in by default. The mental preparation is setting up your life so that the fire hose is always within reach, so that at any idle moment, waiting in line, driving, falling asleep, you can immediately begin pouring in the desired reality. This is not a state of strain or forcing. It is a state of flow, but the flow is redirected. Instead of allowing your mind to flow habitually toward worry, you redirect the flow toward conviction. Instead of allowing your mental energy to pour into the container of lack by default, you consciously direct it to pour into the container of abundance. This becomes easier with practice, but in the beginning, it requires vigilance. You must catch yourself when you drift back into the old thought pattern, and without self-judgment, you must immediately return to the new thought pattern. Each return, each redirection is another pour of the golden liquid. Each moment of dwelling in the desired state is more volume added to the container. The mental preparation is understanding that this is a full-time operation until displacement is complete, and even then, it is a maintenance operation for life. Another aspect of this preparation is the recognition that you are operating on two levels simultaneously. On the surface level, you continue to handle the practical demands of your current life. You go to work, you pay bills, you fulfill responsibilities. But underneath, at the level of consciousness, you are engaged in a constant act of displacement. You are mentally living in the new reality, even while physically navigating the old reality. This dual operation is the secret of all transformation. You do not wait for your external circumstances to change before you change your internal state. You change your internal state with such intensity that your external circumstances have no choice but to follow. The mental preparation is calibrating yourself to operate in this dual mode without confusion, understanding that the internal is the cause and the external is the effect. Finally, the state of relentless input requires a kind of ruthless prioritization. You must recognize that your mental space is your most valuable resource, more valuable than time or money, because it is the source from which time and money flow in your experience. Therefore, you must guard it jealously. You must be willing to turn off the news, to avoid negative conversations, to limit exposure to people and content that pour the old liquid into your container. This is not about living in denial of reality. This is about recognizing that reality is fluid, and what you call reality is simply the materialized form of past thoughts. You are no longer interested in perpetuating past thoughts. You are interested in materializing new thoughts. The mental preparation is the decision to curate your mental input with the precision of a master chef, selecting ingredients, knowing that whatever you allow in will become part of the mixture, and the mixture determines the outcome. The execution of the immersion protocol is where theory becomes machinery. This is not a list of gentle suggestions. This is a precise engineering schematic for flooding your consciousness. Murphy did not teach people to try positive thinking. He taught them to drown in it, to immerse themselves so completely in the new state that the old state had no oxygen, no space, no coordinates to continue existing. The protocol has 3 steps, and each step must be executed with the precision of a surgeon and the intensity of a warrior. This is the Firehose Method in action, and it is the only method that produces true displacement. Step 1. The choice of solvent. You must choose the new material you want to fill your mind with, and this choice must be specific, tangible, and singular. You are not choosing a vague desire like, "I want to be happy." You are choosing a specific mental substance, a precise affirmation, a vivid mental scene, a defined feeling state. Is it peace? Then what does peace feel like in your body, taste like in your experience? Is it wealth? Then what specific evidence of wealth do you dwell upon? The weight of a full bank account, the ease of purchasing what you need, the respect in others' eyes. Is it health? Then what does your healthy body feel like moving through space? What energy do you feel coursing through your cells? Murphy taught that the subconscious mind works with specifics, not generalities. It cannot produce happiness in the abstract. It can only produce the specific mental images and feelings you feed it. Therefore, your first act is to define your solvent with crystalline clarity. This definition must be written. You must craft a statement or description that captures the essence of your desired state in such vivid language that reading it immediately transports you into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. For example, if your chosen solvent is wealth, you might write, "I am now living in the abundant flow of infinite supply. Money comes to me easily and frequently from expected and unexpected sources. I feel the deep satisfaction of financial security in every cell of my body. I move through my day with the calm confidence of one who knows there is always more than enough." This is your solvent, your chosen liquid, and it must be so potent, so concentrated, that even a single exposure to it begins to alter the mixture in your container. Murphy understood that weak affirmations produce weak results. Your solvent must be strong. Step 2. The flood. This is the core of the protocol, and it is where most people fail because they underestimate the volume required. To flood your mind means to expose yourself to your chosen solvent continuously, relentlessly, without pause. You listen to your affirmation on a loop, not once in the morning, but dozens, hundreds of times throughout the day. You record your statement in your own voice and play it while you work, while you drive, while you fall asleep. You read books that reinforce your desired state, not as casual entertainment, but as deliberate input designed to add volume to your container. You visualize your desired reality not in a single 10-minute session, but in every spare moment, while walking, while showering, while waiting. You do not give the old thoughts a single second of airtime. When an old thought arises, and it will because the old pattern has momentum, you do not fight it. You simply return immediately to your solvent, pouring it in with renewed intensity. The flood is not about effort in the sense of strain. It is about effort in the sense of relentless consistency. You are not trying to force the old thoughts out. You are simply not giving them space to exist. Imagine a room where someone is trying to speak negative words to you, but you have turned on a loudspeaker, playing your affirmation at such volume that you cannot hear the negative words. The negative words may still be spoken, but they do not enter your consciousness because they are drowned out by the volume of the positive. This is the technique. You turn up the volume on your desired state so high that the old state cannot compete for your attention. Murphy taught that the subconscious mind is impressed by repetition and feeling, not by occasional wishful thinking. Therefore, the flood is characterized by high frequency, constant repetition, and high intensity, deep feeling. Practically, this means structuring your day around immersion. You wake up and immediately begin pouring in your solvent, perhaps 5 minutes of intense visualization before you even get out of bed. You continue with spoken affirmations while preparing for the day. You listen to your recorded statement during your commute. At work, during breaks or moments of idle time, you return mentally to your desired state. You eat lunch while reading material that reinforces your new consciousness. In the evening, you immerse yourself further. More visualization, more reading, more affirmation. Before sleep, you fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, allowing your subconscious to work on it overnight. This is not obsession. This is engineering. You are systematically displacing the old pattern by giving it no room to breathe. The flood also requires emotional intensity. It is not enough to repeat words mechanically. You must feel the truth of them as you pour them in. Murphy taught that feeling is the secret, the element that gives the thought its power to impress the subconscious. When you say, "I am wealthy," you must generate within yourself the feeling of wealth, the relief, the confidence, the gratitude, the ease. When you visualize your desired scene, you must feel yourself in that scene, experiencing it from the first-person perspective, engaging all your senses. The combination of high frequency and high feeling creates the firehose effect, a torrent of new consciousness so powerful that the old consciousness is physically displaced from your mental container. This is the mechanics of miracle. Step 3. The overflow. You continue the flood until you reach what Murphy called the saturation point. This is the moment when the displacement is complete, when your container is so full of the new substance that the old substance has been entirely expelled. You will know this moment not by external evidence, but by internal evidence. You will reach a point where you naturally stop worrying because your mind is literally too full of the new idea to hold the old one. The old fear will knock on the door of your consciousness, but there will be no room for it to enter. You will find yourself unable to generate the old feeling of lack, even if you try, because the feeling of abundance has occupied all available space. This is the overflow, and it is the sign that true displacement has occurred. The overflow manifests as a kind of mental immunity. Just as a body full of health has immunity to certain diseases, a mind full of wealth consciousness has immunity to poverty thinking. The negative suggestion from the outside world, the news report about economic collapse, the friend's story of financial struggle, bounces off your consciousness without penetrating because there is no internal matching frequency to receive it. Your container is sealed by saturation. Murphy taught that once you reach this saturation point, the materialization of your desire in the external world is only a matter of time, because the internal condition is complete. The external must follow the internal by law. This is not hope, this is mechanics, but the overflow is not the end. It is a threshold. Once you have reached saturation with your desired state, you must then maintain that saturation. The old thoughts, though displaced, still exist in the collective consciousness in the environment around you, and they will attempt to seep back in if you relax your vigilance. The post technique, which follows the immersion protocol, is the maintenance system that keeps your container full of the new substance. However, before we discuss maintenance, it is critical to understand that many people never reach the overflow because they stop the flood too soon. They pour for a day, a week, maybe a month, and when they do not see immediate external results, they conclude the method has failed and they stop pouring. This is the equivalent of heating water to 90 degrees Celsius and then removing it from the heat, wondering why it never boiled. Water boils at 100 degrees and displacement occurs at saturation. You must pour until you reach the threshold, and the threshold is non-negotiable. The post technique that follows the immersion protocol is simple but essential. When an old fear knocks, and it will knock because habits have momentum, you do not open the door to examine it, to have a conversation with it, to understand why it has returned. You simply say, with the calm authority of a landlord who knows his property rights, "No vacancy. The room is full, there is no space for you here." This is not denial, this is boundary enforcement. You have filled your mental container with a new tenant, and you do not evict the new tenant to accommodate the old one. The old fear may knock persistently at first, conditioned by years of easy access to your mind. But with each refusal, with each "no vacancy," it learns that it is no longer welcome, and eventually it stops knocking. This is how you maintain the overflow, not by fighting off intruders, but by calmly informing them that the space is occupied. Murphy's brilliance was in understanding that transformation is not about wrestling with demons. It is about filling the temple so completely with light that demons have no dark corners to hide in. The immersion protocol is the method of filling the temple. The flood is the fire hose. The overflow is the saturation. And the post technique is the lock on the door. This is the complete execution of displacement, and it works with the reliability of physics because it is physics, mental physics, the mechanics of consciousness, the engineering of reality. Now we must address the fatal mistakes, the errors that doom most attempts at displacement before they even begin. These are not small errors. They are fundamental misunderstandings of volume metrics, and they explain why millions of people affirm daily, yet see no change in their lives. The first and most catastrophic mistake is what I call the drip method, and it is the subject of the hook I promised you earlier. This is the mistake of low volume, of insufficient input, of bringing a water pistol to a flood control operation. The drip method is affirming for 2 minutes in the morning and worrying for 14 hours throughout the day. It is attending one motivational seminar and then returning to a life of constant negative self-talk. It is reading one chapter of a positive book and then watching 4 hours of fear-based news. This is a drip into a mud bucket, and it does nothing. To understand why the drip method fails, you must understand the mathematics of dominance. Your subconscious mind does not respond to the positive thought you had for 2 minutes. It responds to the dominant thought pattern you held for the majority of the day. If you spend 2% of your waking hours in wealth consciousness and 98% in poverty consciousness, which consciousness do you think will dominate your experience? The subconscious is a totalitarian realm. It is ruled by the dictator of dominance, and the dictator is determined by sheer volume of time and intensity of feeling. A faint whisper of "I am rich" once in the morning is obliterated by the thunderous roar of "I am broke" that you repeat silently to yourself every time you check your bank balance, every time you see a bill, every time you compare yourself to others. The drip method is attempting to change the ocean by adding a cup of fresh water to it daily, while the ocean continues to be fed by rivers of salt water. It is mathematically futile. Murphy understood that to displace mud, you need a fire hose, not a drip. You need intensity and you need frequency. Intensity means feeling. You must generate deep emotional conviction in your affirmation. Frequency means repetition. You must affirm constantly, not occasionally. The combination of high intensity and high frequency creates the volume necessary for displacement. Think of it this way. If your mind is a scale and on one side sits 1,000 pounds of poverty, thinking accumulated over years, you cannot balance that scale by placing 1 ounce of prosperity thinking on the other side once a day. You must place so much prosperity thinking on that side so continuously that the scale tips, and then you must continue piling it on until the poverty side is lifted completely off the ground. This is not gentle work. This is the work of overwhelming the old pattern with the new pattern until the new pattern is undeniable. The second fatal mistake is what I call looking at the spill. As you begin to pour in the new consciousness with real volume, as you begin to create true displacement, something will happen that most people misinterpret as failure. Things will get messy. The old substance in your container, the poverty, the fear, the lack, must go somewhere as it is displaced, and where it goes is out. In your external life, this may manifest as disruption. Old friends who reinforced your poverty consciousness may suddenly exit your life, sometimes in painful ways. Old jobs that were aligned with your limited self-concept may end abruptly. Old identities, "I am a struggling artist," "I am someone who never has enough," may die, and their death may feel like a loss of self. This is the mud spilling out of the bucket, and it is evidence that the clean water is taking over. But most people, when they see this disruption, panic. They interpret it as punishment, as evidence that they are doing something wrong, as a sign that they should stop pouring and return to the familiar misery. Murphy taught that this spillover is not only natural, but necessary. You cannot keep the old life and gain the new life. The structures built on poverty consciousness cannot survive the influx of wealth consciousness. The relationships built on mutual complaint cannot survive your decision to live in joy. The job that paid you according to your belief in limitation cannot survive your new belief in abundance. As you displace the internal condition, the external structures that were aligned with the old internal condition must crumble. This is not failure. This is the mechanics of transformation. The old form must die so that the new form has space to be born. But most people, attached to the old form even though it causes them suffering, see this death and they stop pouring. They try to save the old life while building the new consciousness, and this is impossible. You cannot fill a space that is already occupied. The instruction for this mistake is counterintuitive. Do not cry over the spill. Let it go. When the old friend leaves, bless them and let them go. When the old job ends, trust that a better one is coming and let it go. When the old identity dies, allow yourself to grieve briefly if you must, and then let it go. The spill is not your concern. Your concern is to keep pouring in the new substance. As long as you keep pouring, the new structures will build themselves automatically, structures that are aligned with your new consciousness. Murphy called this the building of the new temple, and he taught that you must not stop the construction to mourn the demolition of the old temple. The old temple was a prison. Its demolition is liberation, even if it does not feel like liberation in the moment. There is a third subtle mistake that deserves mention, the mistake of dilution. This occurs when someone, understanding the need for volume, begins to pour in the new consciousness, but then dilutes it by simultaneously entertaining doubts. They affirm, "I am wealthy," with intensity, and then immediately think, "But how will this happen? I don't see any evidence yet." This is pouring in clean water with one hand and mud with the other hand. The result is murky water, not clean water. Murphy taught that faith is not the absence of questions, it is the decision to pour in the answer with such volume that the questions are drowned. You do not need to know how your desire will manifest. You do not need to see the path. Your job is to saturate your consciousness with the end result, and the how will take care of itself. The law is the how, and the law responds to consciousness, not to analysis. To avoid dilution, you must develop what Murphy called mental discipline. When a doubt arises, you do not give it a platform. You do not debate with it. You do not try to answer its questions. You simply pour in more conviction. The doubt says, "This is impossible." You respond by pouring in the affirmation, "All things are possible to me now." The doubt says, "You have no evidence." You respond by pouring in the visualization of the evidence as if it is already present. This is not stubbornness. This is the application of the law of displacement to the thoughts themselves. Doubt is a thought. Conviction is a thought. They cannot occupy the same mental space simultaneously. Pour in more conviction, and the doubt is displaced. This is the mechanics. The master's tips from Joseph Murphy himself provide the final refinement of technique. Murphy gave a direct command that serves as the operating principle for all displacement work. Fill your mind with the great truths of life, and you crowd out the negative pattern by substituting the constructive one. Notice the language. You do not fight the negative pattern. You do not overcome it through will. You crowd it out by substitution. This is displacement language, and it reveals Murphy's understanding of the mechanics. The negative pattern is not an enemy to be conquered. It is simply an occupant to be replaced. You replace it by filling the space with something else, something greater, something truer. What are the great truths of life that Murphy refers to? They are the principles of infinite supply, divine love, perfect health, unlimited intelligence, and absolute safety. They are the truths that you are not a victim of circumstance, but a center of divine creative power. That you are not at the mercy of the economy, but are a channel for infinite abundance. That you are not defined by your past, but are free to choose a new identity in this moment. These are not pleasant affirmations designed to make you feel better temporarily. They are structural truths about the nature of consciousness and reality. When you fill your mind with these truths, when you dwell in them, repeat them, visualize their evidence in your life, you are not engaging in wishful thinking. You are aligning your individual consciousness with the fundamental laws of universal consciousness, and the universe has no choice but to reflect that alignment in your experience. Murphy taught that the great truths are solvents that dissolve the false beliefs. A false belief is not a solid object. It is a mental habit, a pattern of thought that has been repeated so often it feels true. But repetition does not create truth. It only creates familiarity. The belief that money is hard to come by is not true in any absolute sense. It is simply a pattern you have repeated until it became your operating system. When you begin to repeat a new pattern, money flows to me easily and abundantly, with greater frequency and intensity than the old pattern. The old pattern dissolves. It has no substance of its own. It was only ever held in place by your attention and repetition. Withdraw your attention, redirect your repetition, and the false belief evaporates like fog in sunlight. Another master's tip from Murphy: saturate yourself in the solution, not the problem. Most people spend their mental energy analyzing their problems. Why they are broke, why they are sick, why they are alone. They become experts in their problems, scholars of their suffering. But Murphy taught that this is like studying the darkness to understand light. Darkness has no properties to study, it is simply the absence of light. Poverty has no reality to understand, it is simply the absence of wealth consciousness. Sickness is the absence of health consciousness. Loneliness is the absence of love consciousness. Therefore, you do not study the absence, you saturate yourself in the presence. You become an expert in wealth, in health, in love. You read about it, think about it, feel it, visualize it, speak it. You make the solution your obsession, and the problem, starved of your attention, withers and dies. Murphy also warned against the trap of testing the law. Some people beginning this practice will affirm for a few days and then test to see if anything has changed. They check their bank balance anxiously. They inspect their body for signs of healing. They look for external validation that the law is working. This is the equivalent of planting a seed and then digging it up every day to see if it is growing. The constant checking, the anxious testing, is actually an affirmation of doubt. It is saying to the subconscious, I don't really believe this is working, so I need to check. Murphy taught that true faith is evidenced by relaxation, not by anxiety. When you plant a seed, you trust that the laws of nature will work, and you leave the seed alone. In the same way, when you plant a mental seed through affirmation and visualization, you trust that the law will work, and you leave it alone to germinate in the darkness of the subconscious. The final master's tip is perhaps the most powerful. Live from the end. Do not live toward the end, hoping to reach it someday. Live from the end, as if it is already accomplished. This is the secret of all manifestation. If you desire wealth, do not act as a poor person hoping to become rich. Act as a rich person now. Make decisions from wealth consciousness. Feel the feelings a wealthy person would feel. Think the thoughts a wealthy person would think. Treat yourself with the respect a wealthy person would command. This does not mean spending money you do not have. It means embodying the consciousness of abundance now, regardless of current circumstances. The external circumstances are old news, the printout of yesterday's consciousness. You are no longer interested in yesterday's consciousness. You are building today's consciousness, and you build it by living in the reality you desire as if it is present now. Murphy understood that the subconscious mind does not know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a physically experienced one. When you live from the end in your imagination, feeling it with intensity, you are impressing upon the subconscious the reality of the end as if it is now. The subconscious, receiving this impression, goes to work to make the outer world conform to the inner world. This is not magic. This is the law of correspondence. As within, so without. As above, so below. The external is always a mirror of the internal, and when you change the internal with enough intensity and consistency, the external has no choice but to change. This is the promise of the law of displacement, and it is a promise backed by the mechanics of mind. Now let us connect the law of displacement to the hard science of chemistry, specifically to the principle of solution saturation. In chemistry, when you take a glass of water and begin adding salt to it, the salt dissolves into the water, disappearing from view. The water can hold a certain amount of salt in solution, seemingly infinite to the casual observer. But there is a precise limit, a threshold called the saturation point. When you continue adding salt beyond this point, something remarkable happens. The salt no longer dissolves. Instead, it begins to form crystals at the bottom of the glass. These crystals are solid, visible, tangible. They are the materialization of the dissolved substance that the water can no longer hold invisibly. Murphy taught that your mind operates on this exact principle, and understanding this principle reveals the entire secret of manifestation. Your consciousness is the water. Your dominant thought is the salt you are dissolving into it. When you first begin to pour in the thought of wealth, It dissolves into your consciousness without visible change. You affirm, "I am wealthy," and you see no immediate change in your bank account. The skeptic concludes that the affirmation is useless. But the chemist knows better. The salt is dissolving. It is being held in solution, invisible but present, altering the very nature of the water at the molecular level. The water is no longer pure water. It is salt water, and salt water has different properties than pure water. In the same way, your consciousness is no longer pure poverty consciousness. Once you begin adding wealth affirmations, it is becoming a solution of wealth consciousness, even if you cannot yet see the evidence. If you keep adding salt, if you keep pouring in the affirmation with relentless consistency, you eventually reach the saturation point. This is the moment Murphy called realization, the moment when the thought has been impressed upon the subconscious so deeply, so completely, that it can no longer remain invisible. At the saturation point, the thought must crystallize into physical form. Crystals form in the solution. In your life, money appears. The job offer arrives. The opportunity manifests. This is not a miracle. This is chemistry. The invisible has become visible because the solution has reached its capacity for holding the substance invisibly. Murphy was teaching mental chemistry, and those who understand chemistry understand that the crystals are not a gift from outside the system. They are the inevitable result of continued input into the system. The brilliance of this analogy is that it explains why most people fail at manifestation. They stop adding salt before reaching saturation. They affirm for a week, adding small amounts of the salt of prosperity into the water of their consciousness. They see no crystals forming, no visible change in their life, and they conclude, "This doesn't work," and they stop. But if they had understood saturation, they would have known that the salt is dissolving, the solution is forming, and continued input will inevitably reach the threshold where crystallization must occur. The failure is not in the law. The failure is in the insufficient application of the law. You cannot expect crystals to form at 50% saturation. You must reach 100% saturation, and then the crystals form automatically, mechanically, without further effort. There is another insight from chemistry. The saturation point varies based on temperature. Hot water can hold more salt in solution than cold water. In mental terms, temperature is emotional intensity. A mind heated by intense desire, by burning faith, by passionate conviction, can hold more of the new thought in solution before it crystallizes than a lukewarm mind. This is why Murphy emphasized feeling. When you affirm with deep feeling, you are heating the solution, increasing its capacity to hold the new thought invisibly while you continue to add more. A mind affirming mechanically, without heat, reaches saturation more slowly and holds less in solution. But a mind on fire with conviction can hold vast amounts of the new thought, building up tremendous pressure, so that when crystallization finally occurs, it occurs explosively, dramatically, in what appears to others as sudden luck or miraculous fortune. Murphy also understood the principle of supersaturation. In chemistry, if you create the perfect conditions, you can sometimes add salt beyond the normal saturation point without crystals forming immediately. The solution becomes supersaturated, holding more dissolved substance than it should be able to hold. But this state is unstable. The slightest disturbance, a vibration, a dust particle introduced into the solution, triggers sudden, rapid crystallization. In consciousness, this is the phenomenon of the overnight success or the sudden breakthrough. Someone has been affirming, visualizing, dwelling in their desired state for months or even years with no visible result. They have reached saturation and continued beyond it, creating a supersaturated consciousness. Then one day, some tiny external event, a chance encounter, a random opportunity, disturbs the supersaturated solution, and suddenly everything crystallizes at once. The money floods in. The healing occurs. The relationship manifests. It appears instant, but it was actually the result of long-term saturation finally reaching the crystallization threshold. The practical application of this chemistry is clear. You must keep pouring until you reach saturation. You cannot determine in advance exactly how long this will take, just as you cannot predict exactly when a solution will reach saturation without knowing the temperature, the purity of the water, and other variables. But you can know with certainty that continued input will reach the threshold. Therefore, your job is not to worry about timing. Your job is simply to keep adding the salt, to keep affirming, visualizing, and feeling your desired reality with consistency and intensity. The law of saturation guarantees that if you do not stop, you will reach the point where physical crystallization must occur. This is not hope. This is chemistry. There is one final chemical insight Murphy would appreciate. Once crystals form, they act as seed crystals, making it easier for more crystals to form. In your life, this means that the first manifestation of your desire, even if it is small, is tremendously important. The first dollar of unexpected income, the first symptom of health improvement, the first sign of relationship healing, these are seed crystals. Once they appear, they make it easier for more of the same to appear. This is why Murphy taught that you should acknowledge and celebrate every small sign of progress. You are not being Pollyanna-ish. You are recognizing the formation of seed crystals, which accelerate the crystallization of the rest of your desire. The process gains momentum, and what began as slow, invisible saturation becomes rapid, visible manifestation. This is the law of acceleration, and it is built into the chemistry of consciousness. Let me now give you the anecdote that proves the law of displacement operates in human life with the reliability of physics. Murphy documented the case of a man, we will call him Thomas, who was trapped in the prison of alcoholism. Thomas had tried everything the conventional world offers: willpower, therapy, support groups, even medication. All of these approaches were based on the same premise: fight the urge to drink, stop the drinking, overcome the addiction. Thomas would succeed for days, sometimes weeks, using sheer willpower to suppress the urge. But the urge was always there, lurking in his consciousness like a predator, waiting for a moment of weakness. And inevitably, the moment would come. Stress, disappointment, loneliness, and the urge would overpower his willpower, and he would drink. Each relapse confirmed his identity as an alcoholic, strengthening the very pattern he was trying to break. He was scooping mud out of the bucket with a teaspoon, while a river of mud poured in. Murphy saw that Thomas was approaching the problem from the wrong end. He was trying to remove the darkness instead of adding light. He was trying to displace the addiction by creating a vacuum, and the mind abhors a vacuum. Every time Thomas successfully suppressed the urge to drink, he created an empty space in his consciousness, a moment of not drinking. But that space was defined by what it was not by what it was. And into that empty space, the urge would rush back with even greater force. Murphy taught Thomas a different approach. Do not try to stop drinking. Try to displace the urge to drink by filling your mind so completely with another feeling that the urge has no space to exist. Thomas was skeptical but desperate, so he agreed to try Murphy's method. Murphy gave Thomas a simple but potent phrase: "Divine peace fills my soul." He instructed Thomas to repeat this phrase every time the urge to drink arose. Not to fight the urge, not to analyze it, not to resist it, simply to repeat the phrase. Thomas was to say it out loud if possible, silently if necessary, but he was to repeat it with feeling, with intensity, with the intention of flooding his consciousness with the substance of peace. Murphy explained that the urge to drink was actually an urge for peace, for relief, for escape from inner turmoil. Alcohol was the false solvent Thomas had been using to try to dissolve his inner pain. Divine peace was the true solvent, and if Thomas could pour it in with sufficient volume, it would displace both the pain and the urge for the false solvent. Thomas began the practice. The first time the urge hit, and it hit hard, a wave of craving that made his hands shake, he began repeating, "Divine peace fills my soul, divine peace fills my soul, divine peace fills my soul." He repeated it dozens of times, hundreds of times. At first, the words felt empty, mechanical. The urge was still there, screaming for alcohol, but Thomas kept repeating, kept pouring in the phrase, and something began to shift. The urge did not disappear, but it began to lose its grip. It was as if the volume of the urge was being turned down by the volume of the phrase being turned up. Thomas repeated the phrase for an hour straight, and by the end of that hour, the urge had subsided. Not conquered, not overcome through willpower, simply displaced by the greater presence of the peace he was invoking. This became Thomas's practice. Every urge was met with the fire hose of repetition. Divine peace fills my soul. Thousands of repetitions per day. He repeated it while driving, while working, while lying in bed unable to sleep. He repeated it until the phrase became more real to him than the urge, until the feeling of divine peace became more tangible than the pull of alcohol. Murphy's instruction was clear. Flood your mind. Give the urge no space, no airtime, no moment of unopposed existence. Pour in the solvent of peace with such volume that the urge is drowned. Thomas did this with the desperation of a man who knew this was his last chance, and desperation provided the intensity needed for displacement. Over the course of weeks, something remarkable happened. The urge for alcohol began to appear less frequently. When it did appear, it was weaker, less compelling. Thomas noticed that his mind was no longer primarily occupied with the thought of drinking or the effort not to drink. Instead, his mind was occupied with the feeling of peace. He had saturated his consciousness with a new substance, and that substance had displaced the old. The alcoholism was not cured through analysis of its roots. It was not overcome through heroic willpower. It was simply washed out, expelled by the incoming flood of a greater reality. Murphy explained to Thomas what had happened. You did not fight your demon. You drowned it in divine peace. Thomas's case proves the law of displacement because it demonstrates that the solution is not subtraction, but addition. You do not remove negative patterns by attacking them. You remove them by replacing them with positive patterns of greater volume and intensity. The urge to drink was not a thing in itself that needed to be destroyed. It was simply an occupant of mental space. When Thomas filled that space with divine peace, the urge had nowhere to exist. This is true for all negative patterns. Poverty, sickness, fear, resentment. They are not enemies to be fought. They are occupants to be displaced. Pour in the new substance with the volume of a flood, and the old substance spills out automatically. This is not metaphor, this is mechanics. Murphy knew it, Thomas proved it, and now you know it. We have reached the synthesis of power, the moment where all the threads of this transmission converge into a single, actionable truth. The law of displacement is not one technique among many. It is the master key that unlocks all transformation. It is the single principle that, once understood and applied, makes all other principles comprehensible. You cannot have a vacuum in consciousness for long. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the mind. And if you attempt to create a vacuum by removing a negative thought without replacing it with a positive thought, the vacuum will immediately be filled, usually by an even more intense version of the negative thought, because the mind, sensing emptiness, reaches for the familiar pattern to fill the void. This is why suppression fails. This is why trying not to think about something makes you think about it more. You are creating a vacuum, and the vacuum pulls in whatever is closest, which is usually the very thing you are trying to avoid. The solution is never to create a vacuum. The solution is to immediately fill the space with your chosen substance. You do not remove fear, you install faith, and faith displaces fear by occupying the space where fear was. You do not remove poverty, you install wealth consciousness, and wealth consciousness displaces poverty by occupying the space where poverty was. This is the mechanics of all change, and it is why Murphy's method works when traditional methods fail. Traditional psychology says, understand your fear, make peace with it, gradually overcome it. Murphy says, ignore your fear, flood your mind with faith, and watch the fear disappear for lack of space to exist. Traditional self-help says, change your habits bit by bit, be patient with yourself, accept slow progress. Murphy says, saturate your mind with the new reality all at once, reach the crystallization point, and watch your entire life transform seemingly overnight. The power of this understanding is that it removes the burden of fighting. You are not at war with your lower nature. You are not struggling against your demons. You are simply an engineer adjusting the contents of a container. If the container currently holds mud, you do not curse the mud, do not analyze the mud. Do not spend years in therapy with the mud. You simply pour in clean water until the mud spills out. This is emotionally freeing because it means your past does not matter. Your childhood does not determine your future. Your current circumstances do not limit your possibilities. All that matters is what you are pouring into your consciousness now, in this moment. Pour in the desired reality with sufficient volume, and the undesired reality must leave. This is law. Murphy's genius was seeing that most people make transformation harder than it is. They add layers of complexity, karmic debt, worthiness issues, deep-seated blocks, when the truth is simple. You are a container and you control the input. Stop pouring in the old, start pouring in the new, and continue until displacement is complete. There is no mystery. There is no secret worthiness requirement. There is only the mechanics of volume and the law of saturation. You have spent your entire life filling your consciousness with the substances of fear, lack, and limitation, not because you are bad, but because that is what you were taught, what you observed, what you absorbed from the collective consciousness around you. Now you have been given the method to change the contents. Pour in the opposite with greater volume. That is the entire secret. The synthesis is this. Choose what fills you, because something will fill you. You cannot be empty. If you do not consciously choose to fill yourself with wealth, health, love, and peace, you will unconsciously fill yourself with poverty, sickness, loneliness, and turmoil, because that is what the world broadcasts on high volume every day. The news pours fear into you. Social media pours envy and inadequacy into you. Casual conversations pour complaint and limitation into you. If you are passive, if you simply absorb whatever the world pours into you, you will become a container of the world's toxicity, and your life will reflect that. But if you actively, aggressively, relentlessly pour in your chosen reality, you become a container of your own divine design, and your life must reflect that instead. This is the choice, and it is always available. The message of empowerment I leave you with is this. Stop fighting your demons. Stop trying to understand your limitations. Stop negotiating with your fear. Stop analyzing your poverty. All of that is attention given to the old substance, and attention is the very force that holds it in your container. Every moment you spend examining your problem is a moment you are not pouring in the solution, and the problem receiving your attention solidifies. Murphy taught that the demons of your mind are not defeated by confrontation. They are defeated by neglect. You starve them of attention, and simultaneously you drown them in a sea of new, powerful, golden thoughts. This is the method. Turn on the hose. Let the displacement begin. You are not weak because you have negative thoughts. You are simply untrained in the art of displacement. You have been pouring into your consciousness whatever happened to come your way, the random input of a chaotic world, and then wondering why your life feels chaotic. But now you know better. Now you know that you control the input and therefore you control the output. You are the keeper of the container, the operator of the fire hose, the architect of your own mental environment. This is not arrogance. This is recognition of the law. The law does not care about your past. The law does not judge you. The law simply responds to your current dominant consciousness, and your current dominant consciousness is determined by what you are pouring in right now. The empowerment is in the simplicity. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to have unwavering faith every moment. You simply need to pour in more of the new than the old, and if you do that consistently, the displacement will occur. Some days you will pour with intensity, and the displacement will accelerate. Other days you will pour mechanically with little feeling, and the displacement will slow. But as long as the net input is more new than old, you are winning. You are moving towards saturation, and saturation is inevitable if you do not stop. This is mathematical certainty. Murphy's promise is not that you will feel perfect every day. His promise is that if you apply the law, the result is guaranteed, regardless of how you feel. The golden thoughts I speak of are the great truths. You are one with infinite intelligence. Infinite supply flows to you now. Divine love surrounds you. Perfect health is your birthright. You are safe, you are guided, you are prospered. These are not affirmations designed to make you feel better. These are declarations of the fundamental nature of reality. When you pour these truths into your consciousness, you're not lying to yourself, you are correcting the lies you have been told. The lie is that you are separate, limited, powerless. The truth is that you are connected, infinite, creative. The truth is louder than the lie, but only if you turn up its volume. Pour it in until it drowns out the lie. Drown your demons in peace. Drown your poverty in abundance. Drown your sickness in health. Drown your loneliness in love. This is not violent. This is merciful. You are not attacking the old patterns. You are simply filling the space so completely with the new that the old has no room to remain. The old patterns will resist at first, will knock louder, will present you with evidence of their reality. Let them knock, let them present their evidence. You are no longer interested in their testimony. You have filled the courtroom of your mind with a greater truth, and the judge, your subconscious, only rules on what is most loudly and consistently presented. Present wealth, and the ruling is wealth. Present poverty, and the ruling is poverty. The gavel falls according to the dominant testimony. Murphy's final gift to you is this knowledge. Transformation is not rare. Miracles are not reserved for the special few. The law of displacement operates for everyone, always, because it is law. The reason most people do not experience miracles is not because they are unworthy. It is because they do not apply sufficient volume. They drip instead of flood. But you, having received this transmission, no longer have that excuse. You know the mechanics. You know the method. You know that displacement is as reliable as gravity. Now the only question is, will you pick up the fire hose? Will you commit to the flood? Will you drown the old in a sea of the new? Or will you continue to live in a container of stagnant mud, hoping that one day it will spontaneously transform into clear water? The power is yours. The law is waiting. The container is ready to be filled. Choose now what will fill it. The challenge I issue to you is what I call the total saturation day. This is not a gentle experiment. This is a full immersion test of the law of displacement. Here is the protocol. Pick one phrase that represents your desired reality in its most concentrated form. If your desire is success, your phrase might be, I am success. If your desire is peace, your phrase might be, I am divine peace. If your desire is wealth, your phrase might be, infinite abundance flows to me now. Choose one phrase, write it down, and commit to it for one complete day. From the moment you wake until the moment you sleep, you will repeat this phrase non-stop in every spare second of your day. Not occasionally, not when you remember. Non-stop. While you shower, repeat it. While you eat, repeat it silently. While you drive, repeat it. While you work, in every moment between tasks, repeat it. While you wait in line, repeat it. While you walk, synchronize it with your steps. Before you sleep, repeat it until you drift off. The goal is to speak or think this phrase thousands of times in a single day. You are flooding your consciousness, creating a tsunami of the new thought, giving the old thought absolutely no space to exist. This is not comfortable. Your mind will rebel. It will say, this is too much, this is obsessive, this isn't normal. Ignore that voice. That voice is the old tenant being evicted, and of course it objects. Keep repeating. What you will discover if you execute this challenge with full intensity is the saturation point. Somewhere during this day, maybe after the 1,000th repetition, maybe after the 3,000th, you will feel a shift. The phrase will stop feeling like words you are saying and will start feeling like a reality you are living. The distinction between affirmation and experience will blur. You will reach a moment where you cannot generate worry about the opposite of your phrase even if you try, because your consciousness is so saturated with the phrase that there is no room for doubt. This is the overflow, and once you feel it, you will understand experientially what I have been teaching theoretically. You will know that displacement is real, that saturation is reachable, and that the law works. After your total saturation day, you will face a choice. You can return to your old mental habits, allowing the container to slowly refill with the old substance, or you can maintain the saturation by continuing the practice at a lower but consistent volume. Murphy taught maintenance through daily saturation sessions, perhaps 30 minutes of intense affirmation and visualization in the morning, repeated at night. This maintenance keeps the container full of the new substance so that the old substance cannot seep back in. The total saturation day teaches you what full feels like, and maintenance keeps you full. This is the lifestyle of one who understands displacement, constant vigilance over the input, constant commitment to pouring in the desired reality. But even if you never do another day of practice after your total saturation day, that single day will have given you an irreplaceable gift. The proof that your consciousness is yours to control. You will have demonstrated to yourself that you can, through sheer volume of input, completely transform your mental state, even if only temporarily. And if you can transform it for a day, you can transform it for a week. If you can transform it for a week, you can transform it for a lifetime. The only difference is consistency. The law does not change. The mechanics do not change. Only your application of the mechanics changes. Murphy's promise is that the mechanics, once understood and applied, produce results with the reliability of a mathematical equation. The final call to action is this: subscribe to Sacred Logic to fill your mind with gold. This channel is your fire hose. Each video is another gallon of golden consciousness poured into your container. You cannot displace the toxic sludge of the world's fear-based programming by yourself. You need constant reinforcement, constant input, constant reminders of the law. This is not about entertainment. This is about systematic mental reconditioning. Each video is a saturation session designed to crowd out the old patterns with the new. If you are serious about transformation, you will not consume this content casually. You will immerse yourself in it. You will watch, rewatch, take notes, apply the principles, and then return for more. This is the path of the master. Relentless input of truth until truth is the only thing that can exist in consciousness. The law of displacement is now in your hands. You know the mechanics, you know the method. You know the mistakes to avoid. You know the promise. Pour in the new with sufficient volume, and the old must leave. Now there is nothing left but execution. The parking space is still full of the wrecked truck of your old consciousness, but you are no longer praying for it to magically disappear. You are backing up the fire hose, and you are about to flood that space with such force that the wreck is washed away, leaving room for the gleaming new car of your desired reality to park. Turn on the hose. The displacement has already begun.